Welcome everybody to the Synapse Philosophy Group. We are on Stevenson's senior text, page 269, principle number 27.
Wow.
And we are getting through the 33 principles. And I just, whoever is, new to this, and no one is, everybody's been on here, but I just want to say it for the other people that listen. Everyone has a chance to join in. Everyone's allowed to share. So, try and join in with us live sometime, and, we can get rocking and rolling all together. There's a lot of good stuff in this. I'm going to read this one. And Alan, if you don't mind, if you could read page number 28, is that cool? And we're going to stop early in that. All right. Right at about halfway through page 271. Okay. The normality of innate intelligence. Innate intelligence is always normal, and its function is always normal. This is a principle from the triune of life, principle 4. For more specific application, intelligence is always perfect, always 100%. The forces which it assembles is always correct. They are not correct when they reach tissue cell if there is interference with the transmission. But that is not because of imperfection of innate's work, but because of the limitations of matter. This is so important to understand chiropractic as a whole. Principle number 24. It is because of conducting tissue. The conducting tissue is imperfect or receives tissue cells.
Or the receiving tissue cell.
Yep, that's it. Receiving tissue cell is imperfect. Both the conducting tissue and the receiving tissue are matter, which is the third factor of the triune of life. The only member of it which can be imperfect, the imperfection, of course, is in structure. Structure determines function. The molecules of the wrecked locomotive are just as good as those in a locomotive in running order, but the wrecked locomotive is imperfect in structure and therefore is not a good organ to express man's wishes. Anybody want to discuss that?
Read the last paragraph. It's just the end of it.
Yep. Here again, we see embodied in a principle, local and condition. Local referring to the conducting material, and condition referring to the function or receiving material. I think that's a really great description of really, it gets the subluxation in there, helps us understand what's happening from one point to the next. And, innate is always perfect. Anybody else? Am I muted here? No.
No, you're good.
Yeah.
Find something.
Go ahead, Steve.
As a student of yoga and meditation and spirituality and religion, this fits right in with the world of the matter, of the transient nature, the imperfection that has death, sickness, aging, yet that which makes us human or whatever, that innate is perfect. This is just chiropractic is the perfect healing art that is an expression of the perfection of all religious thought. It just, I love it. It's just, it's perfect. It's an application of ancient truths.
Yeah. I mean, these are laws, really, right? They're truths. And they relate to every culture. They relate to philosophical thought. They relate to religion, spirituality, absolutely. And I think this is a succinct principle here. Anybody else?
I like the analogy, and it makes me think of others, of the wrecked locomotive, that to talk about innate is, and the relationship of this to the triune, that intelligence, force, and matter is the weak link, the leg on the stool that can be broken, if you will, or damaged and create an issue. That intelligence and force are always perfect and are going to be right, and that the matter may be limited, and that is going to allow healing to occur or not. And that's out of our control. That's something that so many chiropractors forget. When you're worried about change in symptoms, sometimes you adjust somebody and their symptoms get worse.
Yeah.
I had that experience when I was taking national boards, and when I was at Sherman, the first part of boards, I was feeling crummy all day long. And I went through and I took the test, and I went over at Graham Dobson's apartment, because he was my chiropractor at the time. He was at the school. And for those of you who know Graham, and he adjusted me. And by the time, I was at Spartanburg, which took 15 minutes to drive from one end of the city to the other in rush hour. Right? And this is like at nighttime. And by the time I got home, I was running a raging fever. And my sister apparently called me that night, because she called me the next morning and said, to find out how I was doing. And I said, "What are you talking about?" She says, "I called you last night and you were delirious." And, my body had not been able to deal with what was going on. I got adjusted, I ran a fever, and by the next day I was good. But I expressed a lot of symptoms. I got worse before I got better. And that happens. I used to see that in my office, that you adjust you probably see this, Haig, because you see a lot of kids that adults, you adjust them and the fever goes down. Kids, you adjust them, the fever goes up before it goes down a lot of times, in my experience.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I saw that happen, more often in kids. It would go up before it would break, and that's, a fever's supposed to go up and down and up and down. It's when it plateaus that it's the issue.
Yeah.
And usually you adjust it and it changes.
And it's not to fight the fever, right? The fever's doing something beautiful.
No, it's there for a purpose.
Yeah.
Symptoms serve a purpose.
Yeah. The structure, what he's talking about, I love the train wreck. It's still a train, but one works and one doesn't. The wrecked one is still a train, and your cell is still doing what it needs to do. The cell is imperfect. It is because the conducting tissue is imperfect, or the receiving tissue cell is imperfect. Both the conducting tissue and the receiving tissue matter, which is the third factor of the triune of life. Their matter. The matter is also important, but there is a limitation to the matter.
Matter is limited.
Matter is limited in how its structure is, right? And, because I think of Pasquale always talked about, he talked about arches, right? The Roman arch really changed the world. They just changed the structure. And really, the world changed from that arch. They was able to hold a load. And I've been to Italy multiple times and still seen these beautiful aqueducts that are still standing today that look fairly narrow. They look spindly. And that structure is really, amazing. But if it's imperfect, then we have failure. And it's the transmission, right, is always perfect. They are not correct when they reach the tissue cell. Okay, in this principle, the triune of life, for more specific application, intelligence is always perfect, always 100%. The force which it assembles are always correct. They are not correct when they reach the tissue cell if there is interference with the transmission. That is a physiological, intelligent, easy to understand definition of chiropractic, basically, right? Or a subluxation at least. What do you guys feel? Carol, I think your signal's going in and out. What do you feel about that?
Right now.
Yeah, she's frozen. Steve, you got anything? I can move on. You want to move on to principle 28?
What about this local condition? That's a little odd to me, that last couple of lines.
Here again, we see embodied in a principle, local and condition. Local referring to the conducting material, and condition referring to the function or receiving the miracle. The miracle, the material. But the miracle is beautiful, I think, really. Embodied in this principle, local and condition. Local referring to the conducting material. Well, if the material is the structure's unhappy, which means subluxated, the nerve inhibited, and the condition referring to the function or receiving material. Well, if this hasn't been receiving a proper signal for X amount of years, the receiving tissue may also, may have has a big factor in it, because there's a limitation to that matter. If the heart has been receiving proper signals for 45 years, all of a sudden receiving it doesn't mean that heart is going to heal instantaneously, which it may. I believe in instantaneous healing, but in the limitation of matter, it still has a lot of work to do. Then healing really just begins. Steve, I see you unmuted.
Would you say that innate, or intelligence is non-local? I think so, because we learned that it's somewhere around the brain, but can't be anatomically located.
I don't think it's there.
So
Go on.
what?
Go ahead.
Finish your thought.
No, I did. Is that the tissue is local and the intelligence is not local.
Yeah.
No, I think, and I think we talked about this when I was still at Sherman, that there's innate in every cell in the body. It's not just in the brain. We talk about innate brain, but innate is global, and it's just like universal is global. And it's funny because I was thinking about that today, although we talk in this text and in a lot of our chiropractic discussions about everything being transmitted by the nerve system. But we also now, in some levels of science, I forget the terminology, but there's sonic transmission of neural mental information as well. And I wonder if in reality, and if we talk about that, you go in a room and you can get a sense of the room because it's innate to innate, as we're talking about innate to innate with the practice member on the table in front of us, or the dog when we're adjusting the dog, Carol, right? That there's a communication there. How can there not be communication within our body that's beyond just the nerve transmission? It may be, it works differently and you can interfere with it on the nerve transmission level, but there has to be other information being transmitted. It has to be an instantaneous, it can talk to itself universally and globally instantaneously. And we can communicate when we're in a room together without, we feel each other in a room, less on a Zoom.
For sure. I was just making the point that innate cannot be anatomically located. It's interesting, located and local.
Yeah.
This
I
is
like
what we.
it. Bob, go ahead.
All right. What Alan was saying brought up something I remember reading about, how the nerve system affects the circulating blood vessels, and there's certainly no nerves attached to them. So that's all I got to say.
Well, just as we read some of the other principles in his description, we're not talking about an electrical impulse. We're not talking about a chemical impulse. We're talking about a spiritual communication over the nerves. BJ in volume 33, Fame and Fortune, we did that one on this podcast quite a while back, but there's even a section, where does a thought begin? Where does a mental impulse begin? Is it actually in your brain, or is it even higher than that? When we talk about above, down, inside out, is it above, does it end at my skin here? Or are we in a conscious wave around us? You know, if we are in a quantum soup, or if there's an Akashic record, or if there is a spiritual communication from God through us, you know, where is all that stuff? Is it within this body, or is it bigger than that? Or are we like marionettes, which I don't think so, but you know, I believe more in the clockmaker theory of the higher power of God, but you know, set it in motion and allow it to do its thing. So, but yeah, these are interesting principles, interesting philosophical principles outside of chiropractic that it would be great if more chiropractors spent time thinking about these things.
And again, we have to remember that this was written with the knowledge that was available in 1927.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then there's other information that has been, that validates a lot of this stuff that most of us never think about or never talk about or may never even be exposed to. You know, so that's we have to remember that as we discuss these, that there's more, we've learned more since then.
Yeah. And I don't know, I mean, what year was Schrodinger and his cat that, you know, in the development of quantum physics?
Schrodinger's cat, yeah.
Somebody Google that. And what year is that? This is 1929. And, you know, we've read Dede, and Dede they were working at describing theories and thoughts before the language is created in quantum theory, quantum mechanics, quantum understanding. So, you know, and in 1929, I think that's right.
Cat. When was it?
There we go. Ask Siri. Siri will know.
Google says 1935.
Look, how far ahead of their time are they? Absolutely. And crystals, you know, Brian Corrigan and Pasquale, you know, one thing they talk about all the time is how far ahead of they were in their time was D.D. Palmer. They were way before their time. And I really feel, you know, Stevenson got most of his stuff from D.D. Palmer. And, you know, he elaborated on things and he was great at describing. And I love how I'm finding, you know what, since we've gone through this book, I never really wanted to get into Stevenson's that much. I really wanted to spend more time with Dede, but now we've digested this book. We've done from the normal complete cycle, we've done the freshman text, we've done the senior text, and I've read the sophomore text or whatever it is. And, you know, I really enjoy Stevenson's. I really have got an appreciation for this book now that we've really digested it well. So anybody have anything else?
Well, even with modern technology, I think that the way the non-local intelligence grips matter is still not fully understood.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
We call it the force, is the link between intelligence and matter. But do we really understand how that which is non-physical interfaces with the physical?
Yeah. It's amazing. I'm in amazement of it. And think when I was in school, I started really becoming amazed with the synapse and the synaptic cleft. This is the space. And I always thought of this, see that big space, and then there's magic happen between there. And then I had a thought, I said, you know, is that the fall of man? When you see, you know, the painting of Michelangelo, you know, God and man, the fall of man, are we disconnected? We're no longer hardwired, right? You know, so that was one of my thoughts I've been thinking about a long time. I might get the answer one day before I pass on. We'll see. But, you know, this whole system we live in, this, you know, material body and the spirit that lives within it and constantly maintains it until it's done with it, is truly amazing. There is nothing more amazing than that because I live in this house, right? Wow. And I'm glad to be on here with you guys because this is a lot of fun. And I haven't seen Carol in so long. I'm happy to see you and your new dog. You are our PHC, and I'd like to give an acknowledgement to Marina. She is on her honeymoon now, and she said still on her honeymoon. So she must have been on her honeymoon for a while because she's been married a few months. So they're having a great time, and I'm really happy for Marina and some of the other regulars we have on here too. So she's out today. She sent me a message. Took the time from her honeymoon to send a message. That was very nice. Anybody else want some clarity or bring up something?
You were talking about the space. You got it, and it made me think. We were in London a few years ago, and when you ride the metro over there, they say mind the gap when you get off on and off the train. Mind the gap.
The mind has to get through the gap. If that isn't intelligence and have to step that, I mean, it's just amazing to me. Just out because before chiropractic school, I didn't know that existed. That's not common knowledge, right? It's not hard to find, but we don't realize how amazing we are as beings, right? And I think the more we help people understand that, the regular folk, then they will hopefully, I think they would make better decisions for their life and health, but people are kept in the dark of how amazing they truly are. Alan, I tell you, you have a halo on you. You look very...
I had that light on behind me tonight. Yeah, I usually turn that off because it looks so weird.
Well, you look very, religious back there. You're enlightened. You're enlightened. Carol, too, you have the beams coming down on your head.
That's right. Your light's coming down, yeah.
Me, I just have a dark head. It's whatever. No light.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh, my goodness. Anybody? And Steve, how you doing? How are you healing, buddy?
Like a child that learns how to bike ride. Every new function every day is exciting, and It's amazing. Yeah,
that's great. Are you out of the rehab now from your accident?
Yeah, I'm home, and every day it just takes time to rebuild tissue.
Yeah. That's great. I'm glad you sound good.
I'm lucky to be alive.
Yeah, man. All right. Do you think, guys, we should go on to 28? Alan, you want to read? Or you want me to?
I'm happy to read.
Okay. Just to give you guys a little bit of input, Principle 28 is gigantic. There is so much in here, and a lot of it is good, but it's more student text. So we're going to read a page and a half, okay? And then we're going to skip to page 292. So just realize we're going to skip from 271 to 292. Alan has a few highlights to pick up in there. And then we'll get to Principle 29 probably next week. Okay, everybody? Yeah. All right. So Article
345 on page 270 of the senior text says the conductor of mental force, principle number 28. The forces of innate intelligence operate through or over the nervous system. Nearly all of us have read or studied some physiology. We learned the bones, muscles, and organs, and the chief functions of the various parts of the body. We have always known that there is a spinal cord in the human body. We learned in a general way, quote, that the brain controlled our movements, unquote, and the actions of our organs, and the sensation depended upon the system of nerves. The fact that this system might go wrong did not occur to us, or if it did, we were apt to think it not that important. Since most laymen have gone this far in physiology, when the chiropractor explains how incoordination can and does occur through the wonderful system of nerve tissue, it looks reasonable to them. But at first, the layman is apt to get the idea that the chiropractor stimulates these nerves, thinking of the effects only. A lot of chiropractors live in that world too now, don't they? Therefore, it is necessary to explain that stimulation is not the same as the natural current which is being delivered to all parts of the body. If every living thing depended upon stimulation from the outside in order to have its organs function, every one of them would have to have a doctor attending to them day and night, continually sending in stimuli, which shows the absurdity of such a belief. The chiropractor aims only to restore, that's in bold, to bring about restoration. He adds no more current, but removes the obstacles to normal flow of that which should be supplied to the tissues from the inside. He is able to show how pressure upon nerves can hinder or the normal flow, and the manner in which he removes the pressure so that Innate, who is able to attend this body of tissue day and night, may deliver that which is necessary to the organs. The doctor could not give this continuous service, but Innate can. The service of Innate is not stimulation, for stimulation is addition, not restoration. Stimuli are adapted universal forces. Stimuli are adapted universal forces, not messages of control. Stimuli only add more uncontrolled universal forces to tissues which are already in the grip of such forces. The brain is the headquarters of Innate's control, the seat of the mind. It is very delicate tissue and is kept in a bony cavity, well padded and protected. The manner of this function is and always has been a mystery. But for that matter, the manner of functioning of any tissue is still a mystery. That is Innate's business. Since the brain is tissue and composed of tissue cells, much like any tissue cell, except in form and purpose, it is probable that they function as any other tissue cells, merely responding to their signs of life, adaptability to the forces which Innate delivers to them to use or to transmit. You good there?
Yep, that right there. Yeah. If we just got principle 28 through the ears of every student in chiropractic school, you know, there would be a shift in the entire profession. You know, chiropractors aim at the chiropractor aims only to restore. The stimuli, you know, is not what we're doing. We're not stimulating function. We're allowing, you know, Sisyphus used to say, I move the bone, God does the healing. My job is done. And if we even really move the bone, I deliver the force, Innate adjusts the bone in the proper place at the exact right time. I'm stepping away. That changes everything.
There was something in direct relationship to that. I have it. I saved it on my phone here. I can't get to it on the computer at the same time. That somebody posted, I forget on which site it was this week, that was from volume 31, I think. The hour is struck. And it says, the majority of chiropractors work with the concept that they are the all-important feature of adjusting subluxations, that it is what they do that replaces a subluxation, and with this thought, they proceed to push vertebrae into position. They think that they need to be pushed into. Adjusting in their hands means pushing bones into adjusted positions. I never have such a concept. To me, adjusting a vertebra, paren, the adjustment with that extra something, close paren, is what happens after my hands have left the back. It is that reaction that occurs when Innate recoils in the body of the patient, which resets the vertebra into normal position. My work is an enticement to get Innate to make the adjustment. the adjustment with that extra something, invariably, when Innate adjusts the subluxation, that's all caps. When Innate adjusts the subluxation, it stays longer and the readings remain absent much longer, and the patient gets well quicker, and I can take more dangerous cases and get them well, where otherwise anything I did would have failed. Needless to say, that's BJ. But
I love the entice. I love it. It entices the vertebra. Is that right?
Entices Innate.
Entices Innate. I like that.
Yeah. It's the chiropractor thrusts, the body adjusts. The chiropractor thrusts, Innate adjusts. It's we put in a force that then Innate says, I can use this, and proceeds to restore a more normal function.
Yeah. That was from what volume is that?
I think that's 31. The hour is, I think it's the hour is struck. Is that something to that effect?
I'm sitting here. I have Maynard's 1959 volume 37. And I'm just starting to look through it. I've got an OG copy. I've got an original copy of it here. Someone posted as something from the beginning at DE. And I said, I don't remember that in that book. So now I've got to find it. I haven't found it yet. So I think it was maybe from a different book. But yeah, so, that's, that concept really has been, flexion distracted away. We've been distracted. The flexion distraction, that's such a distraction. I've had it on my spine. It feels pretty good. It's not so bad, but then we are becoming the fixer. And I just pick on that technique a little bit, but
that's, that's still just a force that's being introduced that Innate can use or ignore. That she has to adapt to either way. She has to try to adapt that force. Is it something she can use? Then you get a healing process. If it's not, it can make it worse, or it can just leave it and nothing happens.
Yeah. Well, that's where I see a lot of people moving every vertebra, right? Not going to this, wonderful Innate to try and stimulate something instead of finding that subluxation, what the body Innate is truly asking for. Here, I need some force to make some change. There's a physiological process waiting to happen.
And being aware of the fact that my experience is that the closer I could get to what was needed by that body, the less force I needed to use. That's not to say sometimes you didn't need to use a higher force type of adjustment, but I found that I used very little force a lot of the time and got just wonderful results. It's how close can you get? Can you find what Innate is asking for and just put a little bit in? I used mostly lower force. I used DNFT. I used activator. I used torque release. Those were I used Thompson, which also in its own way was a low force technique because you put in a very little bit and the table drops and the work is done. You're not putting a lot in there. And that was my experience.
Yeah. That's, it becomes, well, that's where the art comes into. In practicing our art, not everybody is an artist, and I'm picking on a technique, and I didn't really mean to. I didn't mean it to be a technique thing.
No.
I just really said, it's the distraction of things. We're being distracted.
Good play on words. I like it.
A little play on words. And, we're being distracted in so many, obviously now it's outrageous with what's happening in the world, but, distracting the chiropractor ourselves from being the fixer. And we have people like, oh, I feel so great today, and I do stop them, like, tomorrow you might not be, and the next adjustment we might have some ups and downs through all this. My job is really to clear the subluxation so your body can heal you, and there are times you might feel worse. Still come in, right? It is very important we go through this process, and it's wonderful. I had a woman today. Because I say, that pain is a gift. Thank God you can feel. And she's like, I've had better gifts. Yes, I have too. You're telling the truth. I've had better gifts. But she has said it with a snarl. I've had better gifts. Like she was a pirate.
You don't have to like it.
Yep. Yeah, it's great.
You have to see it's something. You have to see where the lesson. Sometimes you can't see the lesson until later.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Think of a child. I'm hearing my daughter repeat things, I said to her before, and where I didn't think she heard a darn thing, and, it takes time to sing it. I'm just getting, things my mother taught me, like, yes, my mother was right. Absolutely. And my father.
Yeah, sometimes you see sometimes, you have it, I know Stephen is learning from this experience. It's not the best thing. It's not the most pleasant experience, but you learn from stuff. But sometimes the lessons come and something unpleasant happens. And then a year later you go, oh, that's why I got that. You learn stuff later sometimes. Yeah. Why is the pain there today? I don't know, but maybe we'll figure it out later.
Yeah. I have a little something at the woman, my shoulder and my arm was bothering me, my elbow, one arm was colder than the other. I had a student there and I'm like, and his brother were visiting. And I said, feel my arms, one's colder than the other. And then a woman started talking about her, what do you call it? Meniere's. And
Meniere's
with an
disease,
adjustment. Yeah. I've been seeing her for about 5 years. She had major bouts where she'd lose bowel function, everything. And she just started talking to these guys about her experience. And I could feel my shoulder, just everything going back into place. My hands were warm again. And it was just that moment of whatever she was giving off love is what it was. She was giving off love and I received it. And my structure began to change. I felt it. I felt it in my whole, my cervical spine, my shoulder, my arm. Truly amazing. Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah. Hey, Steve, I'm glad you're healing up. And it's really wonderful what you share because it's so true. Finding that wonderment in the healing process and that amazingness of it. And seeping in, running through all of that is that gratitude that you have for it, And so, I mean, this is instructional for everybody. And of course, that's the kind of stuff we introduce to people who come to our offices because our philosophy is full of that way of thinking and it's new to them. And yet when they hear it, boy, they fall in love with it. They really do admire it at first, maybe from the outside, but I think then they let it come into their inside and it becomes how they think and feel too. So yeah, keep on healing, buddy.
Yeah, you've got a lot. Go ahead, Steve.
Before this happened a couple years ago, I was having pain in my left arm and neck, and I was trying to get rid of it. I was trying all these different things. I mean, not just getting adjusted, but everything. And I was talking to some people, and I got to the point where I just relaxed and accepted it. And I drew a picture of me with it red and inflamed and me looking away and avoiding it. And then I drew another picture of me just looking at it and accepting it. And I painted it green and I accepted it and it got better when I stopped resisting the pain and accepted it.
It's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
Well, that's, and that's I've been reading a lot of stuff and with Thich Nhat Hanh, who's a Buddhist monk, and he talks about, loving your suffering. You have to love your suffering, love your anger, and which is the same thing. You look at it and you accept it as part of who you are, and you show it compassion, and it dissipates. Because it doesn't really serve you a purpose in its bigger sense. It's there for a reason, and then as you learn to deal with it and you accept it and accept it in others, and it calms you. But you have to show compassion to the things that are a challenge.
Yeah, I'm not here to accept it. I'm here to accept it, but I'm not here to like be it. You know what I mean?
No.
I'm going to. That's the only way I can get through it. Is first I accept it. That doesn't mean I'm going to become it. Yeah.
Nice. That is awesome. It's good to see your face, Steve. Go ahead, Bob.
You know, when we talk to our patients, it's so instructional. You know, let's say you know an area that's been just jammed up tight and hasn't moved in years, and you go in there and you give it the force, and it releases from that stuck position. And you know, there's a good chance that person's going to be sore for a couple of days. And when you tell them before they tell you, when you let them know, listen, my hands don't heal you, the adjustment doesn't heal you, it's after the adjustment that the body's power is on that does the healing. And it's very it continues to do the adjustment after you get off the table, and it may, you know, be working for a couple days even to while it has the opportunity. You know, this bone's been stuck for a long time. All of a sudden, it's moving a little more freely. This wisdom that runs your body is so smart. It recognizes right away the opportunity to do something about that, to use that, you know, to now have that freedom to do something that it couldn't do because the bone was so darn stuck. And so, you know, it's so great because it all goes back to teaching them about their own innate.
Yep. Yep. You know, that's a beautiful thing, helping people to realize how powerful they are. I mean, you're amazing. You're truly amazing. Yep. Thanks for
And
that,
your
Bob.
story, Haig, was what we were talking about earlier. It's that innate to innate communication. You got something from the practice member that's talking to this person over here, and you are getting a healing response in your body as part of that. It's a global sense, a global innate communication that goes on there.
Yep. Yep. Awesome, guys. We had a great, anybody have anything else? I think this was a great night. Got a lot on this one. So next week we're going to be on 30. Oh no, 29. Excuse me. Okay, 250, 295 is the page. Okay. And interference with the transmission of innate. So he's setting us up for this next one, really, right? So read ahead a little bit and get some ideas, get some questions or whatever, something that you want clarity, okay? And we can discuss it. And as Sigafus used to say, I listen to some CDs, he goes, you put that in your pipe and smoke it, and I'll see you next week. Okay.
All righty. Thanks, guys.
Good night, guys. Have a beautiful night.
And girls.
And girls, excuse me.
All right, enjoy.
Bye-bye.